Trust me, I'm right here with you. Most meetings could absolutely be solved by an email, but this is not one of those meetings. Hey everyone, how's it going? I'm Wackett. Thanks for joining me for another video as we work to empower and equip you with the confidence and skills to write your own story so that you can live a life on purpose. Today we're going to be talking about one of the most effective tools to optimize your home life and improve the connection and communication between you and your partner, the weekly meeting. Seriously, this one activity can completely change our overall sense of well-being and flow within the household. Years ago, I had the opportunity to meet one of the kindest souls on the planet, Tina Hallis, at a women's retreat in Madison, Wisconsin. During one of the many fruitful conversations over our weekend together, we talked about partnership and how hard it can be to make sure that your relationship evolves alongside each individual's personal growth and transition. Many of us in the group shared that so much of our distress can come from built-up resentment, assumptions, and lack of time together, or in many cases, effective communication strategies. Feeling like you go unnoticed, you don't have the help you need, or aren't being supported. Like many of you, I'm sure can relate, it can feel like there's only so much time in a given day. And in many instances, you and your partner can feel like ships, just passing each other in the night. You're carrying so much with you and trying to navigate so many different roles and responsibilities, which can lead you to lose sight of each other in the chaos and the doing of each given day. This is a product of living in a culture focused on doing over being. I don't know a single person who doesn't have a to-do list that gets copied over day to day, hoping that one day they're going to catch up. And for what? But the bigger issue isn't just what we're chasing, but what gets lost in the chase. We lose sight of the importance of time and connection. We lose sight of the being with ourselves and being together. We lose sight of the importance of open communication, asking for what we want and need rather than just hoping for or expecting it. Celebrating and expressing gratitude for the other person, learning about their distress and pain as a means to hold space for both of you, and creating a collaborative household rather than siloed existences. And in this, we're running ourselves ragged, all while feeling lonely, resentful, and in a constant state of shame. When I fall into this state of overwhelm, it becomes tough to hold space for others. I begin to resent everything I have to do, while simultaneously afraid of what would happen if I couldn't do it all. I judge Jordan for all that I perceive him not to be doing or how he's letting me down in the story that I'm existing in. I start to expect things without communicating them and feel lonely and unsure in our relationship. I feel like both I'm failing and like everyone around me is failing me, which leads to this intense space of hopelessness and helplessness. In talking amongst some incredibly insightful and empowering women, Tina shared that one thing that had really transformed her relationship was a weekly meeting. They had a set time, an agenda for each week. Topics could be added by either party, and there were always standing points to check in about, such as parenting. I was instantly hooked because I love planning and organization, and the chance to set time on our calendars for Jordan and I to connect each week that was non-negotiable, heck yeah. I went home that night and shared with Jordan my excitement about this new idea, to begin holding a weekly business meeting wherein we could talk about our schedules, household stuff, check in about our relationship, and so much more. We've now been holding almost weekly meetings. One of us, me right here, has had to learn the power of flexibility in all of this, especially when her husband works in emergency medicine. But truly, almost weekly meetings for 12 years. And while the content and process continues to be refined and expanded, I can honestly say this is one of the best moves we've ever made in our relationship. Throughout the last 12 years, we've gone from dating to engaged to married and now married parents. And as such, some of the priorities and overlap between us has deepened, but the 4 consistent things that we've had on our agenda since its inception include 1, the weekly schedule review. What's coming up this week? What do we need from each other? Are there errands or tasks that need to be accounted for? And if so, who's going to do them? One of the more recent additions that's been really helpful is looking at meal planning whenever possible, but more importantly, meal prepping. Sometimes we don't know or honestly care to plan what we're going to have for every meal. Maybe we're on Monday and we don't really want to think about Friday night dinner, but we assign who's responsible for it so the other person can cognitively offload it. We also talk about how to spend downtime in the evenings after Everly goes to bed. This came out of a commitment to finding balance between getting stuff done, taking personal time for relaxation, and making sure that we had time together. Sometimes it's scheduling a night to watch an episode of a show that we might be watching. Currently, that's Stranger Things season 4. Anyone else? Sometimes it's planning a game night or a creative night where each of us is working on something creative downstairs while we have a beer or tea and we share what we're working on. This part has been huge for me, especially, as I've always struggled when Jordan is home with making myself kind of overly available to be with him or to do what he wants. A big part of it is just loving spending time together, but it would create tension and pressure for both of us because I would have other things I needed to do and yet wouldn't do them, which of course would lead to future resentment from me towards him. Deciding upfront which nights are for personal work or creativity allows me to do the other things I need to do without feeling guilty about it, and also have that dedicated time for the two of us built into the schedule to look forward to. The second thing that we do is a finances check in. Now, this has evolved as our relationship has changed. Initially, it was much more about bill pay and shared expenses, and it's now become a review of our budgeting app, You Need a Budget, and looking at not only weekly expenses, but talking about longer term goals, such as saving for a house, how much to put into an emergency fund, managing student loan payments, especially during the pandemic, etc. We've also seen from these discussions the value in now having semi-annual finance retreats where we talk about our goals, values, and needs and make sure how we're living our lives now and saving for our future aligns with this. The third thing we do is a relationship check-in. How are we feeling about our relationship? Do we have any asks for each other? Is there anything sitting with either of us that feels unsettled or bothersome? This has been a game changer for me as I can struggle with the idea that not everything needs to be talked about in the moment. If something happens, I go, well, let's fix it now. Sometimes when I'm ready to talk about it, Jordan might be coming off a stretch of overnight shifts while Everly's asking him to read a book and he has a pounding headache. And that might not be the optimal time for him to effectively engage in a conversation. Having this dedicated time to reflect on issues gives me pause when I want to bring something up so that I can consider if it could wait or be better served or heard in this weekly meeting context. This also helps us solve the issue of both getting space to talk and get the responses we need from each other. I'm much more of a talker than Jordan, and sometimes I can talk so much it can leave little space for him to process or share. And oppositely, sometimes I need more from Jordan than he can always give me. To help manage this, we try to create an intentional space within these meetings to share what has been happening, how we're feeling or perceiving something, and what we need from each other. This helps keep the information direct and makes the asks more specific. And finally, our last section that, again, we've had from the beginning is a section for individual topics and miscellaneous items. This is where the one-off tasks get added, such as getting a gift for a friend whose birthday is coming up, brainstorming a future vacation, or making our next IKEA trip wish list. Now, as we've grown and our roles and experiences have evolved, we have made some additions and changes to our system. One of the biggest things has been an Everly specific section. So parents and caregivers, this would be a separate and specific section to each individual you take care of. And in this space, we talk about any developmental notes and we make sure that we're on the same page with things, such as nap schedules or the language we use on a given topic, maybe talking about potty training planning. We talk about plans for school, managing safety with COVID, Zoom calls, and plans to set up for her to stay connected with family and have play dates. We also make space to talk about any guilt or shame that we might be holding on to with regards to Everly, such as maybe feeling bad about saying or doing X in a given moment with her, missing her when it's been a particularly busy week and feeling bad for not having more time to be with her. Now, a note to anyone with new babies, when Everly was first born, we did this portion daily. So much changes every day with infants, so we would do a daily check-in and talk about anything of note, but especially what we did well, what we learned, and how we can pivot or show up differently tomorrow, and the asks that we had for each of each other and ourselves within that. I highly recommend, at least for the first 3 months, that you incorporate this 5 to 10 minute check in into your daily routine. Now, the other thing that we've done is we've made a more specific offshoot from the relationship check in to include a wellness section. We do a check in and review of how each of us is feeling mentally, physically, emotionally. We check in with how we're doing with time for self care and exercise. If we need to consider any changes to our activities or things that we might be eating or doing, we talk about supports such as therapy, massage, switching up meals. This discussion has really allowed us to make sure we hold ourselves and each other accountable to getting time every day to move our body, whether cycling, weightlifting, yoga, or stretching. These conversations led us to make probably one of my favorite investments that we've ever done, which was purchasing a Theragun to help both of us manage muscle pain and stiffness, and in particular to help Jordan with his ever-evolving sleep schedule and some of the neck and back pain that comes alongside this. In the long run, it's way cheaper than massage, and for the two of us with such complex schedules and having a toddler, this alleviates the stress of trying to schedule a time to go in and get a massage instead. So we can just pull out this Theragun from the cupboard and start using it, and it helps us just make sure that we're taking care of our bodies. We've also used this wellness time to check in about tech use or even connecting about our relationships and connections that we want to make sure we prioritize. Now, logistically, we meet every week for 60 to 90 minutes. We try to meet on Sundays whenever possible, but the date sometimes changes depending on Jordan's work schedule. We have a shared database in Notion where we keep every meeting agenda, which, side note, may be one of the best digital tools I've ever used, and I will absolutely include a link to this as well in the show notes. At each meeting, we sit at the computer together to review it and pull up any information we need for different agenda items, such as our budget tool during our finances check-in, or we can call up past agendas as needed. Now, as I'm going through all this, you might be thinking this is a lot to cover in 60 to 90 minutes. It is. And not every topic is packed with discussion points each week. At most meetings, we can cover everything on our agenda or offload some tasks to be completed asynchronously if warranted. If we have more topics than we can get to, then we simply move the remaining topics to the following week. The best way for us to manage this is to indicate sections that are top priority throughout the week when each of us is adding to the agenda. And I suppose I should also say that the other helpful point to manage our time is even a step back from that. It's making sure that each of us does make time with that agenda every week, reviewing the topics, adding the things that are important to us so that we do come in prepared. Now, I know nothing occurs in a vacuum, so it'd be hard to say that the meeting alone has had X impact on our relationship. But I can tell you that even from week to week, if we have a week we miss a meeting, there's definitely a greater feeling of anxiety and distress in the household. We're less coordinated. I, for sure, am tenser and easily annoyed. We're less creative with food and seem to end the week feeling more rushed and stressed, even if nothing about the actual workload has changed. The weeks we have a meeting, I notice less daily decision fatigue, a greater ability to manage my distress, and to fight against my shame's propensity to feel like I have to do and be it all and then be upset about it. Jordan and I are much more intentional with our communication those weeks, and I'm much better at switching into and being present in the different roles that I have. I find myself feeling less of that task bleeding, where one thing kind of bleeds into the next until it's all a big mess in your brain, and can let go of the scarcity mindset around time because I can anchor on knowing when I'm going to do or not do X. And in terms of scheduling, it's made me much more intentional in how I show up to and manage my workload. So what does all this mean to and for you? Well, if you are living with a person or people, I would highly consider bringing this ritual into your life. Whether it's a partner, roommate, family, whatever, designated time to connect is incredibly important. It's like regular maintenance on a car so that it's always running smoothly, or putting your clothes away at the end of each night so that you don't end up with a large pile that kind of prevents you from even accessing your closet. Again, that's me. So if you're thinking, I don't have time to do this, I already feel overwhelmed and crunched for time on a regular basis, I get it. I really sincerely do. And it's not true. You absolutely have time. You have way more power and control than you think you do. It's just about freeing yourself up to make the choices that best serve you to stop chasing that edge of burnout. Now I'm going to include a link to a worksheet in the show notes for you about the idea of assessing how we spend our time and money and what the ROI or return on our investment is for each one of our expenses. When we get stuck believing we don't have enough time, it's usually a sign we need to rebudget and work through and address the rampantly running shame narrative running through our brains. Now, second, if you're thinking, my ex, partner, roommate, whatever, will never go for this, then again, you are right. If you go into this thinking that someone will never do X, you'll never give them the opportunity to choose differently. You're either just going to swipe this idea away and go back to that perpetually stressful and crappy dynamic within your home, or you're going to pitch it to them in a way that leads them straight to the no. So instead of saying, I know you probably are going to think this is dumb and not really want to do it, but, or it's okay if you don't want to, but could we try having a weekly meeting? Say something like, I know our relationship is as important to you as it is to me. I also know that both of us work incredibly hard and it can be a lot for each of us to hold. I learned about this tool called a weekly meeting that can really help couples, roommates fill in your relationship here, feel less stretched, and like their time is less condensed. And I thought we might try it for a bit. What are your thoughts? To help you get started, I'll include a weekly meeting template in the show notes that you can download for free and make your own by adding or changing it to whatever works for you. Again, we've gone through at least, 10 to 15 renditions of our agenda over the years and are always editing it to match what works best for us. So take it, try it, and make it yours. Now with that, I leave it to all of you. And as you're moving through the process, I would love to hear from you. If you've tried a weekly meeting or you're already doing something similar, share how this has helped you. If you're getting stuck getting buy-in, ask for help and let's brainstorm together. And if you have other game-changing tools to share to improve communication and connection within the household, load up the comments below so that we can all keep learning, growing, and supporting each other. Now, before you go, make sure that you get the links to all the goodies that I mentioned throughout this video and a few other resources that I love in the show notes below. And if you like what you're hearing, be sure to subscribe to save yourself the time and energy of having to check back regularly for new content, and instead you'll get an alert whenever there's new awesomeness to check out. And if you want to stay in the know on all things adversity rising, plus get exclusive access to content that I don't share anywhere else, click the link in the show notes to sign up for my email list. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I am so excited for you to bring this game-changing strategy into your lives. Because remember, we all have the right to author the stories that allow us to thrive and live our best lives. So let's take the pen back and make this work for you. See you next time.